Thank you for watching ECSO News, where facts matter. I'm Allison Morgan.
And I'm Amber Southard. Let's go ahead and take a look at our top trending headlines. We need your help locating a possible witness to a homicide. On September 29th, 41-year-old Rufus Montgomery was shot and killed on the 200 block of North New York Drive. If you have any information about Rufus's homicide, contact Crime Stoppers at 433-STOP or the ECSO at 436-9620. We also need your help looking for 3 suspects wanted for home invasion. On October 11th, Philip Joseph Wood, Stephanie Wilkinson, and an unidentified third male wearing a bandana armed themselves with firearms and robbed a home on the 200 block of Brigadier Street. Wood and Wilkinsons were thought to have been driving a 2017 blue Nissan Altima. That car has now been located. If you have any information about their whereabouts, call Crime Stoppers at 433-STOP or the ECSO. Again, that's 436-9620. And do you know where Jamie Yeldon Jr. might be? He's wanted for a home invasion and shooting that took place on September 26th on La Vista Avenue. Yeldon Jr. is also wanted for driving while license suspended and resisting arrest without violence. You can call Crime Stoppers with any information.
Let us know if you can identify any of these suspects. On September 23rd, this man was captured on video surveillance, peeping into a home on Montgomery Avenue. Then he stole a generator from a carport. And during Hurricane Nate, this guy apparently thought it was a good idea to burglarize Miracle Faith Center on North Palafox Street. If you have any information on any of these suspects, call Crime Stoppers at 433-STOP or the ECSO at 436-9620.
Right here from your Escambia County Sheriff's Office, we present you with
Wheel of Fugitives!
Let's see who our lucky winner is going to be on the Wheel of Fugitives. Give it a spin.
All right, this week's winner is Tamara Casher, and she's wanted for grand theft with a bond of $1,000.
Tamara, we were just talking about you. You actually took a pretty good mugshot, but if you'd like to update it, we need you to update it. We want you to come down here to the Escambia County Sheriff's Office. If you don't turn yourself in, somebody else will. They'll get to collect a prize on your behalf. You get no money, they do. So come on down, turn yourself in, and let's just go ahead and get that taken care of. Melanie, tell the people how they can win.
That's right. Well, if Miss Casher chooses not to turn herself in, you can for her. Call Crime Stoppers at 433-STOP. Give us her location, and if she's arrested based off that information, you could receive a reward of up to $3,000. Remember, folks, crime doesn't pay, but we do.
A big thank you to Coastal Bank and Trust on West Romana Street for showing their support and appreciation to local law enforcement with free lunches. They brought subs, drinks, cookies, gift bags, and some homemade goodies to the ECSO. And we also want to thank In-N-Out Bakery and DeLuna Coffee for hosting and donating to our last Coffee with a Cop event. National Coffee with a Cop Day was on October 4th. In-N-Out Bakery donated donuts and DeLuna Coffee provided the coffee.
Everyone had a great time at our Cops and Kids event last month. First Lieutenant Simmons gives us an inside look at the Fall Festival.
This is Cops and Kids, and it sounds just like what it is. We want the kids to come out and interact with law enforcement officers in a real fun setting, a picnic. That's why we're out here. We want the kids to see us as fathers, mothers. That's who we are. And we want to have fun with them. We want to play games with them. We want to get pictures taken with them. So that's why we're out here, to interact with kids in a less formal environment and have a good time. We got the SWAT team out here, we got the K-9 unit out here, we got the Sheriff's Mounted unit out here, we've got the Explorers that are fingerprinting and photographing kids. We have a whole bunch of games. We have a new game out here. It's a obstacle course where you run through the obstacle course, the kids do, and chase the bad guy. And at the end of it, they handcuff the bad guy, and then they take him to jail.
Our Citizens Law Enforcement Academy will be kicking off on November 9th. This class gives the average Joe a chance to learn about their sheriff's office. And the Neighborhood Watch Academy is just around the corner. The event is November 21st at the Sheriff's Office located on 1700 West Leonard Street. It's aimed to help people understand and create neighborhood watches in their own neighborhoods. It's free and open to the public. October is National Bullying Awareness Month. ECSO News' Amber Southard and Sergeant Ramos give us a better understanding about bullying prevention inside Escambia County schools.
Well, today we're going to be talking about bullying in the schools with Sergeant Ramos. So, Sergeant, we were just talking a little bit about what can be done when it comes to bullying in the schools, and a lot of it actually comes down to what the school district can handle, not as much as what law enforcement can handle.
Correct. So the proper procedures is a child will go home and the parent sees symptoms of bullying, which I'll tell you later if we get to it. And then the parent will actually report that to the school. So it's handled administratively initially. And there's a system at the school where they go into a computer and they log in the suspect and the victim, and so they keep track of those things. But the bullying, when it reaches a height of cyberbullying or stalking, is when the SRO or law enforcement actually gets involved.
Okay. And the symptoms of bullying, what are those?
A parent may notice their child, the grades will deteriorate, they're not sleeping as well, they don't want to go to school, they don't want to eat, very reclusive, so those changes they'll look for in their child, and then of course they'll hopefully have an open relationship with their child enough to get to the bottom of what's going on.
So in schools, if it's a physical kind of bullying, they're in front of each other, and this is kind of happening. That's more up to the school district?
So the confrontations that occurred during school that would, I guess, reach the height of bullying would be just constant and repeated and harassing in nature, which also falls into the arena of stalking with us. But if it's just, if it doesn't rise to a very violent nature, then it's handled as just bullying, which is administrative. And of course, they have suspensions and in-school referrals and other punitive measures that they can take with the kids.
But if it gets to stalking or cyberbullying, that's when we see the cases.
Correct. The SRO will be notified from usually the school dean, who will then bring the SRO in, and he'll look at the facts, or she, and circumstances, and figure out if it rose to that level, contact the parents, and always it's whether or not the parent wants to pursue charges.
And what would constitute as cyberbullying? What are some examples?
So there's a lot of things on the internet that actually would make a parent aware of the things to look for. All of our children have access to all your little apps on their phones, from Instagram to Facebook. So they could be stalked by repeated and constant text messages. They can be bullied through Facebook, Instagram also. And in order to find those things, a parent obviously has to be vigilant, but there's a really good video out there that a lot of parents can access, and it's Amanda Todd on YouTube. And that actually enlightens a lot of parents to the kind of bullying that can occur in the early stages, so that your child doesn't get to the point where they've gone too far and law enforcement has to get involved.
And October is Bully Awareness Month, and that's kind of why we're sitting down and talking right now, just so the parents understand. But we put on a workshop here at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office that deals with cyberbullying and lets parents and students know what those signs are and what they can do.
We have had a couple different workshops and had open invitation to the public, and we had few people show up for that. The greatest resource we have for educating the public with bullying has been the information that goes out either on social media, because like I said, Facebook is very vigilant about putting into place warning systems. But the more than just at the sheriff's office, because we don't handle the bullying as much as the schools do, is our SROs actually have at their disposal a PowerPoint that they'll take to the classrooms, and they'll actually have a session with the class, with the teachers, and it educates. And myself and another Sergeant Patrick Crosley have went to some of our primary schools, even have asked for us to come and give a presentation to educate K through 6, so that they'll know the symptoms as well. But a lot of those children sometimes don't have phones, which is good.
Yes.
But it still is very impactful, because the teachers can also be aware of the things that they need to look for whenever they see a child in their classroom being bullied.
And you brought up the Amanda Todd case, which was an interesting case. She was cyber stalked and bullied, and eventually it caused her to make a decision where she couldn't come back from. And that's kind of something you talk about with the kids. Do you bring up that case and kind of let them know?
At the very end of the presentation, when we're at these schools, and of course the school resource officers, when they give their presentation, if the school district allows, they'll play that video, because it is very graphic. And it sends home such a clear message about the warnings that we have to heed when we see these actions in our children. So yeah, the decision she took to take her life was there's no other way to overcome or come back from that. So when the kids see that video, it's very enlightening, and I think that they don't see the dangers that are revealed early on. So the video itself is very impactful.
It truly is. So if you get a chance, it is on YouTube. Check it out. It's something you might want to sit down and view first, and then decide if you want to share it with your child. Right. But There are other things. If somebody thinks that their child is being cyber stalked, what can they do?
So the signs that I talked about earlier, the sleeplessness, lack of eating, their grades are deteriorating, they don't have any friends, they're pretty much reclusive, they don't want to go to school. Those things, if the parent will first talk to the child, of course, and then they need to go to the school, and if they've gotten information from their child, of course, they'll provide that to the school administration, who will then look into the issues that have been presented by the parent, and then whatever issues are addressed will be handled disciplinary-wise if it meets the criteria. The Jeffrey Johnson Stand Act was the initial act that was created in Florida statutes to enable the school system to have a punishment system and a tracking system for bullying.
That's amazing to have that in place so you can see if there's a history of it with a child and maybe stop it there.
Right, hopefully. So the school's very effective. They notice these things and things are reported to them, and they're so good at making sure that the teachers are aware of what to look for as well as the SROs. But then again, once it rises past the bullying level and it's brought to the SRO, whether it's cyber stalking or stalking, and sometimes, of course, bullying is a systematic infliction of physical or emotional pain towards someone. So if it's physical pain, then of course you could have a law violation with battery, which is where the SRO would come into play with the situation.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and talking about this topic. It's very important to anybody that has a kid in the school system and want to learn more about it. So thank you for that. Again, if you have any more questions about that, you can always email us at pio@escambiaso.com. We'll probably have another workshop soon, and we'll keep you updated with that on our social media and Facebook pages and right here on ECSO News.
We need your help locating the people in this week's Missing Persons segment. The first juvenile we are highlighting in this segment is 17-year-old Anaya Nakia Johnson. Johnson has been featured previously. She was reported as a runaway on July 12th. She is known to hang out in Warrington Village and Forest Creek apartments. She is known to change her hair color to burgundy. Johnson is a habitual runaway. We are also looking for 16-year-old Dakota Brina Granderson. Granderson has been missing since September 23rd. She drives a 2007 white Kia Spectra 4-door, Florida tag 8468VN, with damage to the driver's side wheel well. Granderson is known to frequent the Pensacola Village apartments. And 13-year-old Trenton Justice Powell was last seen on August 23rd. Powell took a bag of extra clothes with him. We are also looking for 16-year-old Jaquan Tyrese Watson. Watson ran away from his residence on September 14th. He was last seen wearing a gray hoodie and dark-colored pants. He is known to be a habitual runaway and is well known by the ECSO. If you have any information on these missing people, please contact the ECSO at 436-9620.
I'm Escambia County Sheriff David Morgan, and thank you for watching Ask the Sheriff. This is your chance to ask me any questions you want answered about the ECSO. Our team hits the streets again, and here are some of the questions you asked. Lisa asked on our Wheel of Fugitives if they can also put up, deadbeat parents and those that are in arrears in the payment of their child support. Lisa, they are in fact, once they become wanted, if you will, which you can for being in arrears for child support, once a judge has issued a warrant for your arrest. And if you watch that program segment or the commercials that we run locally on TV, you'll notice in some of those charges they will show arrearage in child support, etc. So as those costs continue to accumulate, they kind of go up the food chain, if you will, for being wanted by the court system. And once we get that appropriate notification, you may see his photo soon on the Wheel of Fugitives. Efron asked about detaining of individuals and asking for you to identify yourself, and he thought that that was illegal. Just like the previous question, Efron, where Marcus thought that traffic control points or traffic stops, if you were illegal, these are not illegal either. We can actually enter someone's home. It's called a knock and talk. Unless someone says you can't come in without a warrant and we don't have probable cause to enter or to effect an arrest, We most assuredly just can't stop someone walking down the street and say, hey buddy, come over here and give me all your identifying data. There is almost always an associated reason for that citizen contact. In this case, you may have fit a particular bolo that's out to be on the lookout for. We're looking for a white male between the ages of, last known wearing these clothes in this particular vicinity, etc. And so what we're trying to do is a process of elimination to locate someone. It's not always an arrest situation. It could be that we're looking for someone, your family's asking about you. It could be a health, morale, and welfare check. So the connotation that it's always negative, meaning that we're exerting our law enforcement authority over citizens, just because we can, is a little bit disingenuous. I mean, that's just not true. But yes, we don't do random stops of people. We don't randomly ask for people to identify themselves. But under an appropriate and applicable set of legal circumstances, we most assuredly have the authority to do that. Jeff asked us to contact all the local radio stations and remind everybody to turn their lights on when it's raining, because that's the law. You are correct, Jeff, it is the law. We do occasionally cite people for that. Again, it's not a high priority. We don't stop people and do that. Normally, as a courtesy, we'll tell people to turn their lights on. I'm like you. I think that's such a safety issue. It's like child restraints and everything else. People with any common sense will do that. And I'm amazed at the number of people in inclement weather, as it's referred to, do not turn on their headlights. Some of it's also due to the fact, though, that many of the newer cars today, Jeff, the lights automatically come on when it's dark or when it's raining. So some people get used to that, and then they drive another car, which they have to manually turn on, and they forget that. But we routinely say that on the radio, Jeff. We put it on our Facebook page. When I do WCOA or WSRE, we tell people, in inclement weather, make sure that you turn on your headlights. So we do make a push of that. However, can't be everywhere all the time, and certainly can't be in every vehicle. And while that's a great idea, what do you do about the people, Jeff, that play CDs in their car? Or if it's an old guy like me, they've got a cassette tape in their car. There's folks that never listen to the radio. So while we can put it out over different venues, we have no assurance of reaching everyone. That's a requirement that we call common sense. Unfortunately, common sense is not an issue item. If I could issue everybody some common sense, a whole host of my problems would go away. Neil, who's a recent transplant from Ohio, asked the question, do we have more of an officer-friendly type approach when we have contact with citizens and when we talk to them? Do we give them some sort of gift card and basically say, hey, we appreciate you doing the right thing? Neil, we have had those programs in the past. Our Marine unit has done it for boaters. We also had it for some of our juvenile programs where it was actually, it looked like a citation, and we gave it to, again, juveniles who gave it to their parents. And it basically said, your child was, quote unquote, caught doing the right thing. And there were gift cards to, a lot of the local restaurants and restaurant chains. Those are great programs for, community building, et cetera. And so we've done them in the past. I'm sure we'll do some in the future. Right now, unfortunately, Neil, we don't have enough manpower and officers to engage in a lot of those, what I would refer to as extracurricular activities. But we look forward in the not too distant future to doing those again. Another general question came in about prioritization of law enforcement responses or calls. What's a low priority and what's a high priority? We have an assistant here at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office through Central Dispatch. We use what's called a CAD system, which is Computer Assisted Dispatch, is one of the ways that it's referred to, that acronym. And how a call is coded out, meaning when the call comes in. And so let me start at kind of a low level and work it up to a higher level. If we get a couple of calls that come in, and one's for a noise ordinance disturbance, let's say it's a barking dog, and another call comes in at the same time that we have shots fired in a neighborhood. Well, because of the coding of that call, it will come up on an officer's computer inside their car, and it's prioritized, the CAD dispatch on that. And so quite obviously, the disturbance, the noise ordinance disturbance, a barking dog, would be at the bottom of that call and of course the shots fired would be at the top. And so those are coded for officers, and so they obviously respond, if you will, from the top priority down. And that's why sometimes we get citizen complaints because of the volumes of calls that we have, that our officers, because of the number that we respond to each year, it's always well into the 240,000 to, I think one year we hit 303,000 calls for service one year. That's one for every man, woman, and child in Escambia County. And that's actually calls for service. As you can well imagine, officers go from call to call to call, and so the barking dog call may not ever be responded to during that 8-hour period. And of course, as a citizen, that's important to you. And so you say, well, I called the sheriff's office and nobody ever responded. It's not because we didn't get your call. It's not because we don't want to respond to your call. It's because of the volume of calls and the officers that we have available to respond, we may never get to that low-level call. Blake asks, are we ever going to sign up for live PD? Blake, probably not. And I've used this phrase with a lot of folks, and I'll use it with you, and understand that Blake is not directed at you. But I don't do Jerry Springer. That's the bottom line. We've worked years at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office to raise the professionalism, to let folks know that we are professionals. Now, we can be very direct, but we're also very civil and professional. Unfortunately, when you allow these reality TV shows to come in, they tend to start a very quick de-evolution of law enforcement and society. I'm not sure why any community would want their basest, if you will, among us to be paraded for the world to see, meaning the only thing that does is demean and degrade our community, and I won't be a part of that. We have contact with people when they're at their worst. And by that I mean it can be a situation to where you're in a tremendous amount of grief. You've just had a loved one severely injured or murdered possibly, or you're in a conflict with your neighbor. Do you really want those things on television? I will tell you that I don't. And so therefore will not be a party to that as long as I'm the sheriff of Escambia County. Some citizens wrote in and kind of asked a general question as to what do we think are the most important traits or attributes that we look for in young men and women that want to come into law enforcement. And again, the first things that come to mind is tolerance, having a sense of humor, being compassionate, that sort of thing. But probably the answer, I think, that probably most accurately describes what we're looking for as agency heads, and I'm speaking of myself and other Florida sheriffs and other chiefs of police throughout the nation, was back my first year in office. We had a block of instruction at the Florida Sheriff's Academy, and the subject was character versus competence. And it was, again, the subject basically was, what are we looking for in young men and women that decide that they want a career in law enforcement? And so they kind of synthesized this thing down to answer your question, and it was about character. Because competence can be taught to anyone of reasonable intelligence. We can, teach you, basic ticket writing 101 or traffic stops, or, how to handle a domestic violence situation. All of those things can be very mechanical, meaning that we're going to teach you the elements of the law, officer safety, citizen contact, etc. But what we cannot teach to someone who is devoid of it or who hasn't been taught that from their very early learning experiences is that thing called character. Do you know the difference between right and wrong? Or is it something that we have to prod you or remind you of? And as silly as it may sound in today's society, and it started way back in the 60s with something that became in vogue, which was called situational ethics. And it revolved around the basic question of, when is it okay to lie? And so situational ethics, this whole field in the area of psychology, was brought up about, to save my life or to save someone else's life, I think I could probably lie to get out of that. And while those are instances in the extreme under great moral duress, it's kind of been extrapolated out now to, maybe to get my way would be okay. Or if I'm going to hurt or harm someone's feelings, it would be okay to lie in this circumstance. And so quite obviously, we lose our morality and our character and our integrity by degrading it. It's a series of degradations that go down and we kind of mainstream it's okay to lie. An example is today in the area of employment, most employers will tell you that they throw out about 65 to 70% of what's in your resume because it's creative writing. A whole industry sprung up several years ago of resume writing, to where I take the most mundane or simplest of things and I kind of expand on that to where I've got you walking on water and feeding the multitudes with a few pieces of bread and some fish, and raising the sick and healing, or raising the dead and healing the sick. And so we all kind of read those and kind of give it a big ho-hum. But it is difficult for some people to basically say yes or no, or what to see and define what is right and what is wrong. And that's that thing we call character. And so we look for that in young men and women today through our testing process and through the background investigation, through the polygraph exam. Do you know the difference between right and wrong? And so character is probably the thing that we look the most for those who want to come into the area of law enforcement. Why? Because your safety and the security of our community and our nation depends upon men and women who know the difference between the two. We still get citizens' calls about Amber Alerts and how those are generated and what is the criteria. Folks, to kind of give you a short answer and expect to see this clip played more than once, we don't control the Amber Alerts and the criteria and who makes a determination on whether an Amber Alert is issued or not. That goes through the Attorney General's office and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. So I would direct you to those websites and look up the criteria for how is an Amber Alert assembled and a determination made to issue an Amber Alert in any given instance. Remember, you can also email your questions and ask the sheriff at escambiaso.com. We'll be back next week right here on Blab TV Tuesday night at 8 p.m.